So study the demand for the different types of risk in your system. What if everything's a fixed delivery date? What's the chance you can deliver them all on time? That's a tough one. Now, what if everything on your board is a fixed delivery date and then an expedite request arrives? What do you do with that? You have to decide which person you're going to let down and which cost of delay you're going to incur. What if you had some intangible items on your board and an expedite request arrives? You take the people from the intangible item and you put them on the expedite request. That gets done. Everyone's happy. Nobody cries and you don't incur any cost of delay. So understanding the cost of delay risk, particularly in services and maintenance type of work, is very important risk dimension. It helps us determine when to schedule things. I'll skip past this. Yes, question. I am going to come back to that picture in a later slide, a different version of it. So. The columns are determining the Kanban system, and what this is doing is just allocating the capacity of those Kanban. So yes, the columns take priority over the rows, and the rows are providing a recommendation of how we should replenish the system. And you may want to take that recommendation more strongly or less strongly depending on particular business conditions. This next slide talks about an idea from risk management option theory called the optimal exercise point. Those of you familiar with financial systems will understand that with things like stock options, trading options, commodity, option trading, there is a concept of the perfect point to convert an option, and it will make you the most money. If you do it too soon, you don't make as much money, and if you wait too late, you make less money also, the optimal exercise point. In real option theory, there's also the concept of the optimal exercise point. And I'm going to explain now how you understand this. So what we have here is a cost of delay curve for a typical sort of standard seasonal in nature, standard product feature, S curve. And you can see impact on the y-axis. Time should be written on the x-axis. And this, therefore, is when we need delivery. This is a delivery point we need for this. Well, if we understand the lead time distribution through our system, we can determine the optimal point to start this item. So you look at the lead time here, and I'm looking at the 85th percentile, the 6 out of 7 point. And from that, we can determine that the ideal starting point for this is at this point in the calendar. If we could replenish the system with that ticket on that day, we have a 6 out of 7 chance of it being ready when we need it. And if we don't want to incur the cost of delay and we think it's slipping into that 1 out of 7, we could always expedite it later. This is putting some mathematical rigor behind what the lean people refer to as the last responsible moment. What is the last responsible moment to schedule an item that needs to be launched at that point in time? It would be here. If we start it earlier, it's not optimal because we might deliver it too early. An early delivery means that we forewent the opportunity to have delivered something else that may have been more valuable. So understanding the optimal exercise point helps us to understand how to replenish a system and when to pull certain things from a backlog and commit on them. This slide just points out the hedging of allocating capacity, that if you have a risk of uncertain demand and arrival for these riskier items in terms of cost of delay, you need to hedge that risk with a larger quantity of intangible items so that the people working on these tickets are taken off this and moved on to this as these things arrive. That allows us to deliver items that have real value when we need them, but meanwhile keep people busy and keep our utilization rate high. So Kanban's improving risk management in a number of different ways. It's helping us implement real option theory. It's helping us visualize different dimensions of risk, like the cost of delay, using qualitative taxonomies. It's allowing us to hedge those risks by allocating capacity in the system. However, I've only really shown you one or two risk dimensions. It's a multi-dimensional problem, and I have some other taxonomies that help out with this. This one is to determine the order of magnitude of the cost of delay. So the top level is extinction level event. If we don't get this done on time, the working capital of our business will be exhausted within a few weeks or months, and we will be out of business. Less likely to happen in a big company, more likely in a startup, but it does occasionally happen to entire divisions of big companies. The next level down is a working capital level of major capital level cost of delay. In other words, if this current project is 4 months late, it will cost us so much that we have to forego another project in next year's portfolio. Pretty expensive, shows up as capital expenditure often in the accounting for our business. Next level down is discretionary spending. That's more like whether you're getting a bonus or a pay rise, or those 24-inch flat panel displays I promised everybody, well, we've had to delay that purchase until next year. Lower level cost of delay. Or it might be something like our company promised the stock market that we would make 13% on the funds invested, and actually it's only 12%. Or that we would grow by 7% this quarter and it will only be 5.25%. It's that kind of level of difference. And then finally, there's intangible, which is we can't put a monetary number on it, but it's embarrassing for, say, the company's chief financial officer. And we don't want the CFO to be angry because they got embarrassed. This next one I call market risk of change. This is how likely is the requirement to change between now and when we deploy it to production. And I've got this 4 categories: table stakes, cost reducer, spoiler, differentiator. Table stakes are features that if you do not have in your product, nobody will buy it. You know, it's like a car without wheels. The wheels are table stakes, right? And if you're in the cell phone industry, mobile phone industry, you know, nowadays the table stakes are things like 3G radio, digital wireless radio, 3rd generation is a minimum. We need to have data services on there. We need to do voice calling, text messaging, and so on, right? There's a minimum set of things that would be the table stakes for being in that market. On the other hand, a differentiator is something that nobody's doing yet. It is a new idea, and if it's good and people like it, we'll grow our market share or we'll make lots of profit. A spoiler is copying somebody else's differentiator. It's fast following in the market. And you can see that there are different risks involved here. Differentiators are just somebody's idea. And it might turn out to be a lousy idea. We might do some market research on it and decide, oh, that's a lousy idea, that's a better idea. On the other hand, spoilers are much less risky because what we're doing is copying somebody else's idea. We already know that it works. We know the market share they've acquired with it. We know what what people are paying for it. There's a whole set of different risks with spoilers. Your strategic position of your business might be that we're a fast follower, in which case you would do lots of spoilers. Or your strategic position might be we are an innovator and risk taker, in which case you do lots of differentiators in your product mix. Finally, cost reducers are features we implement to save us money, to help us build the product faster, cheaper, and better, or maybe deploy it faster or service it in the field faster, cheaper, and better. They save us money. They're much less risky because we understand that part of the business better. We're able to assess the value of it a lot better. So, table stakes are highly unlikely to change. The table stakes hardly ever go down. Would you buy a car if it didn't have a radio in it? Right? Radios have been in cars now for 70 years. And it's pretty much a feature we expect. And think about it, gradually as manufacturers add features to cars and other manufacturers copy it, that's spoiling. Once enough people are doing it, everybody has to do it or you won't buy it. Latest features on cars now are things like the LED lights on the rear lights, you know. If the Koreans are doing it on relatively cheap cars, by 3-4 years from now, everyone's going to expect it. They won't buy a car if it has old-fashioned bulbs. They'll want LED lights. So there's a degradation here from differentiator to spoiler down to table stakes over time. And the faster that happens, the more dynamic and risky your business is. The more agile you need to be. Wow. The power's still on, but the lights went out. Regulatory changes. Regulatory changes are table stakes, except that they change. The regulator changes them every year or every 3 months or however they feel like. So they're riskier than table stakes, but you'll also notice that these are absolutely must-have, whereas things further up, we only need to have them if they fit with our strategic plan and our go-to-market strategy. A different set of risks. And you can start to hedge that risk by visualizing how much of each type are we carrying in inventory at any given time. That these items have a different cost of change. The differentiators will have a higher discard rate. Table stakes, very low discard rate. Should be 0 if you're doing it correctly. This last one, I call this product lifecycle risk. How new or old is the product and where is it in its market adoption curve? If you understand something in marketing, there's this concept of an adoption curve where you have enthusiasts, early adopters, early mainstream market, late mainstream market, and laggards. And you make all your money from the mainstream market. Once you get to the laggards, they don't want to pay very much usually, right? So while something is a major growth market and it's in that mainstream part of its adoption, you make most of your money, but you have to invest heavily in it. Whereas if you're now in the tail end of the market, the laggard market, where something should become a cash cow, you stop investing in it and you just milk the cow for the money it will produce as long as the laggard market remains. Therefore, in order to offset the risk of investment in innovative new stuff, we need to be able to make money from the other things. And we might want to allocate the capacity within our system to reflect this. We might do this at the portfolio level. So we might say, this is actually based on a real-world example, a company in the Washington, D.C. area in the financial industry, and they would invest 10% of their cost in the cash cow, 30% in their innovative new products, their new differentiating products, and 60% of their budget went on the mainstream market things where they were still hoping to dominate a market, make a lot of money, and turn that into a future cash cow. This also shows a portfolio-style Kanban where the tickets represent projects And a ticket to this end is very, 0%, this one would maybe 5% complete. And as the project completes, we slide the ticket across the board. When they get to this end, they're 100% complete. So I showed you a number of dimensions of risk and some qualitative taxonomy for assessing those risks. There are other ones. I've published something very recently to do with the shelf life of items, whether it's a short shelf life or medium or long-term shelf life, whether it's got a known end or expiry date like the Valentine's Day function. Well, you can look at your own business and look at what business risks do we have to manage. And part of the analysis you do for requirements should be that risk management analysis. And you can plot these on these multi-dimensional charts. So this is a 5-dimensional chart. These things get called, in risk management, caveat diagrams. In Microsoft Excel, I think they're called radar charts. And you see how we're plotting on this, the different taxonomies on the axis. And for a particular project or individual request, feature, change request, you can plot the shape. My observation is that items with the same risk profile should generally be scheduled at or about the same time in the Kanban system. And imagine that you've got 10 items that all have the same risk profile, but today you only have 2 slots free. But you believe it's the time to schedule these now. Pick the 2 you like the most. There is no need to prioritize them 1 through 10 because they all have the same risks. And trying to get more detailed information, you're probably kidding yourself on, making the numbers up, trying to be deterministic about something that you're incapable of knowing because it's speculation about the future. And I have not met a project manager yet that has a crystal ball in their desk that actually works properly. Rub the crystal ball and it tells them when the project will be finished precisely. That future alien technology has not arrived on this planet yet. So don't try to speculate about the future. Use things that can be established as facts. Is something a differentiator or table stakes? That can be established as a fact. Is it a fixed delivery date item or a standard item? That can be determined as a fact. The dimensions on here all ask questions that can be determined as facts. Therefore, a profile like this is factual. It's based on reality, just like a lead time distribution of your historical performance is a fact, and it's based on reality. Some observation about the way I've plotted this. Items that plot towards the outside should be started early because they're riskier. And items that plot towards the middle should be started later. Actually earlier perhaps because they're not riskier, depends. Differentiator, highly likely to change, therefore defer commitment until later. Table stakes, unlikely to change, may as well start them now. Or table stakes, why not parcel those requirements up separately and ship them off to the Philippines? Don't bother to tell your Western customers that you've subcontracted the job. Or even better, why not encode the table stakes using software factories technology, software product lines technology, and just simply automate the code production? Or even better than that, reuse the table stakes as software as a service from services you created for someone else. Hand up, question. So I think, so the statement was that if you take the historical data of an old project and you create a new project, you couldn't use the same data. That the cycle time will be different. And I would challenge that assumption. That, first of all, it works on the assumption that we tend to form completely new project teams for new projects. And most of the time, I don't observe that. What happens is we take a team off a project when they finish, maybe one or two people, a few people, they leave, they rotate out, we get a few new people, but the core of the team often remains the same. Maybe the size gets a little bigger or smaller, but the rest of the environment hasn't changed. The way we analyze requirements hasn't changed. The way we design the user interface hasn't changed. The way we architect the system, the way we architect the database, none of these things have changed. So the environment has not changed, and the lead time is primarily an environmental effect. It is, however, true that at the bootstrapping stage of a new project, the lead times are always much longer. So you might have observed that the average lead time for a user story is 2 days, and the tail on the distribution is between 5 and 10 days. That's a pretty typical number in my experience, small, agile teams. And you bootstrap a new project. Well, in the beginning, the average lead time is between 5 and 10 days, and the tail on the distribution is measured in weeks. But gradually, we get to know things better. Probably have an example of this. Things begin to speed up. Yeah, I was going to come. So let me come back to this in a few slides' time. This next example shows risk management through improved labor pool flexibility. So what we have here is 4 rows on the board. Now these are divided by table stakes, differentiators. It could be anything. It could be different types of work. It could be change request, bugs, however we want to divide, but 4 rows. And what we've said is, well, we've got a team of people here, and we're going to take about half the team and allocate them specifically to these rows. In this case, we've got a team lead called Joe, and he's got a junior developer called David. In the next row, we've got a team lead called Peter, a junior developer called Rhonda. And then we've got Stephen, the team lead, and he's got Brian, who just graduated from university, and Joanne, who's another team lead, and Ashok, who we also just hired on an H-1B visa. Meanwhile, we have another set of guys. Many of these are very experienced. Some of them are specialists. Some of them more generalist, more adaptable in their skill set, but they don't particularly want the responsibility of being a team lead. Well, Joe and David here, they're responsible for getting done all the tickets in this row. But from time to time, they need help from these other guys. And we decide that at our daily meeting. Who's going to help whom? And this idea of splitting the labor force into roughly half the people who are dedicated to specific work item types or specific deliverables, and roughly half of the team that are flexible workers who can be moved around, often specialists, sometimes really good generalists that can be sort of parachute dropped onto a problem to help out and get it done faster. That improves the labor pool liquidity that we have. It also keeps our utilization rates high, because these people will always be heavily utilized because there should be enough work in their lane to keep them busy. Meanwhile, these people maintain high utilization rates by moving around from one row to another. So this gets over some of the anxiety about how do you keep people busy when you've got a WIP limited system and items are blocking and so on. There's also some other advantage that the junior people could be rotated around over a period of time, and once they've tried out all the different aspects of what we do, then they can get promoted and become one of these people. And we give them a promotion and a pay rise because they're now a more flexible worker, and they're actually helping us manage our risk better, and they deserve the pay rise. So it provides career path and visual observation of the different roles and responsibilities that people are playing within this service. Pop-ups just say that, basically. We've observed this pattern in at least 3 companies. 3 times, when I see something 3 times, I begin to think it's a pattern. Okay, coping with larger deliveries. I want to talk about this. It came up. Imagine we need to get a project done, or some activity that needs to be done by a fixed date, maybe replacing a database platform and recoding all the stored procedures and persistence layer code that might need to be changed in order to work with the new generation of the database, or we're migrating from one manufacturer's database to a different one. And we want to do that sort of slowly and gently without it becoming a panic later on. Well, imagine we modeled that over a couple of years, and in this case, we've got, we believe, maybe 2,200 stored procedures and persistence layer functions that need to be modified. Well, we can expect that at the beginning of the time when we're getting this project going, we're going to go a bit slow. And then once we've figured it all out, the environments, the requirements, the team have gelled together, we've got all our tools working, and so on, we go fast. And then towards the end, maybe we slow down again because we're doing integration and bug fixing and other things. So if we measure the completion rate, the delivery rate of finished work, it tends to follow this S-curve shape. And we can model the S-curve using this very simple Z. Now remember Little's law, mean delivery rate equals WIP divided by mean lead time. Well, the lead time is the thing we treat as a constant. It's observed from our historic capability. And if we say to ourselves, okay, we have lead time data from a team of a certain size that had a certain sort of skill set and experience level, if we build a similar looking team doing relatively similar work, because let's face it, you mostly do relatively similar work. You know, if you have a team that does financial applications for finance customers, you go find other finance customers and you funnel that work to the same department. So they mostly do the same kind of stuff from one project to the next. It's very unusual that we completely rip things apart, completely rebuild, and do a completely different type of work. It might happen, but it's unusual. So we treat this guy as a constant because it's primarily environmental, and we can more or less build a team that looks close to the previous team, often with a lot of the same people. Then, the delivery rate comes from the plan that we have. That slope in the middle, how fast do we need to go? And those things will help us determine the quantity of WIP. And from the amount of work in progress, that will determine the staffing level we need. So, on the chart I showed you, that middle section, when we need to go fast, is 55 per week. And if we have a team that can complete a user story on average in 2 days, with a tail of between 5 and 10 days on a distribution, then that's 0.4 weeks is the mean lead time. If we do that math, we end up with a WIP of 22. And these numbers are actually based from a real project in 2007, where I then massaged the number and said 22, it's kind of an awkward number, let's round it up to 25. And that would give us 5 teams with 5 items each. So what I was envisaging in my head was a board with 5 lanes on it, 1 team on each lane. And if we take a look at that board, these are large requirements, and then they're being broken down into these yellow tickets, which are user stories. And we have 5 teams. The team member names are written in here for each of these larger requirements. User stories are going to flow across here. And this was a photograph taken very early in the project. It really wasn't fully bootstrapped at that point. Wasn't fully staffed, but we've got one team per lane. You see the fixed team member names here, and then the other team members are represented by these orange tickets with the names of the people written on them. This middle section, these columns are design, coding, and testing for the user stories. And the lead time here should be a mean of 2 days if we're going to hit the project plan. This was an $11 million project with 55 people on it over 16 months. Non-trivial activity, and it's all being managed on the basis of, can we move these tickets across in 2 days or less? And actually, inside that green box, if this project was a photograph taken when it was fully staffed and really moving, you should be able to count 25 yellow tickets. Actually, if you count them, there's 17. So we were not, fully up to speed at that point. So the median lead time, notice I've switched from median to mean there, just briefly. The reason is human beings deal with medians a lot easier than means. If I was to ask you, imagine you're my development team and I said, so guys, what's the mean lead time for the tickets? You'd have to go look in the electronic system. Now, Swift Kanban can answer that question for you, but it's much easier for me to say at the stand-up meeting, on average, is every other ticket 2 days or less. Every other one is the median. Now, the median and the mean are slightly different because there's a tail on the distribution, but the difference might be like 0.1 days or 0.2. Remember, I fudged the 22 up to 25. That compensates for the fact the median and the mean are not the same. So an $11 million project, are we going to get it done on time? The day-to-day management is a very simple task. Are these tickets, every other one, moving across in 2 days or less? And of the odd ones that take longer than 2 days, have they exceeded 5 days? And if they have, we want to know about it as the managers, because we want to escalate that. We don't want that tail on the distribution getting longer. That puts our project at risk. Last few slides here. So what I've shown you is a lot of mechanics of using Kanban systems and visual boards. It turned out when we did these two things together, other stuff started happening. And there's some basic principles. Kanban, it turned out, created this evolutionary capability in our organization. Our processes started to evolve and change more and more rapidly. And there was some core principles in my management thinking. Number one was, we will start with what we do now. We want to avoid resistance to change. The second one was, we'd agree to pursue an evolutionary approach to change rather than a revolutionary approach. We're not going to throw out the old way and replace it with a new way. Number three was, we'd initially respect current roles, responsibilities, and job titles. People attach their identity to this stuff. Right? You want to understand someone's identity, look at their email signature, or their Twitter profile, or their Facebook profile. Right? That tells you stuff about them. And if you decide that you're going to change that stuff, they'll resist. And last, encourage acts of leadership at all levels in the organization. Encourage people to speak up. Right? Encourage them to highlight problems and empower people. There's a lot of empowerment potential in Kanban because it's making the rules very explicit and it's visualizing how things work. The next thing here, that in 2009 I was writing the book on this topic, and I thought, okay, of all the successful Kanban implementations I've seen around the world, what are the common factors? And I enumerated it as these 6 things. 1, visualize. Visual boards turn out to be very powerful, whether it's electronic or physical or both. Many people keep both the physical and the electronic system. 2, limit the WIP. I could have said here, implement a virtual Kanban system. But it turns out that just limiting work in progress helps tremendously, and it was very permission-giving. It lowers the barrier to entry. Just limit your work in progress. Virtual Kanban system a bit more complicated. Organization are policy decisions that were created in the past for risks that existed in the past and may no longer exist, or that were made for risk management reasons without consideration of the real business context. It could be something as simple as all code must be reviewed by the security analyst. Suddenly your security analyst is a one-person bottleneck, and that could be in a 400-person organization. And the senior executives are not aware of that policy, nor are they aware that one person in the whole organization is the constraining factor on getting things done. What if you were to do some analysis and come to the conclusion that not everything needs to be reviewed by the security analyst? Bifurcate the work so that some of it goes to the security analyst and others doesn't. Policy change eliminates the bottleneck. That's only possible if you make the policies explicit. Number 5 is create feedback loops. I'll show you that in a moment. And number 6 is improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. Encourage people to speak up and make suggestions and try things out. And if it doesn't work, small change, you can roll it back, go back to the previous way of doing it. And skip this slide. So, here is Darren Davis, a manager who worked for me in 2007, leading a daily meeting in front of the board. And you know this is working well when people start coming up to you and saying, you know, these daily meetings are so boring. Everything we know is on the board already. Everybody knows what's going on. The only point in doing the daily meeting is so we can do the after meeting. And the after meeting is where they discuss the process problems they're observing. And they have discussion about what they could do about it, and they start making suggestions. And the Japanese word for this is Kaizen, an English event. Right? Kaizen means continuous improvement, and the team is suggesting process changes. It could be as simple as adjusting a WIP limit or changing a policy, or it could be something much more elaborate like, you know, it's about time we implemented continuous integration around here, and that will need a bigger plan to get it done. That's the bottom level feedback. The bigger level feedback are operations reviews. And for me, these were all hands meetings where we've got managers from individual departments presenting, in our case for 8 minutes, they got to present 4 or 5 slides with basic metrics like the demand they were seeing, their capability to supply, their lead time, their cumulative flow diagrams, and so on. And then they could highlight issues that were impeding them from improving, generally interdepartmental issues. It's the operations review meeting where you surface the issues that are causing the flow efficiency to be low. Right? This is the level of meeting where you discover what's causing the waiting times. And you drive a different level of process improvement. There are very few Kanban teams in the world doing operations reviews, and as a result, the companies that are implementing Kanban are getting localized improvement, and they're missing a massive opportunity. One telephone equipment manufacturer in Scandinavia, a very famous brand name, they're brilliant at Kanban at the department level, just brilliant at it. They've got all sorts of service delivery and maintenance organizations doing it. I've seen some wonderful Kanban boards, 3 meters high, 10 meters long, 300 tickets on the board, 200 of them blocked. And then the following week I'd be at a different building, different part of Europe, and I'd see another board and I'd discover that these people are processing all the tickets that are marked as blocked on the other one. And there was no managerial forum for one department to provide feedback to the other and managers to actually get anything done about it. So without the operations review mechanism, they had left a lot of opportunity on the table to do things faster, better, and cheaper. So, to sum up, there are 5 benefits that I perceive from doing Kanban. You get improved predictability from all that data, understanding lead times, limiting WIP, making the environment very consistent. You get better business agility because you focus on how often can we replenish, how long is the lead time, and how often can we deliver. You get better governance because a lot of risk management rules and corporate investment government rules can be expressed explicitly in the Kanban system and visualized. So if someone says, how is that policy or decision we made being implemented on the shop floor, you just walk them down to the board and say, remember you said we should do 10% on cash cows? Well, this is how we're doing that. And you go count the people, you'll find 10% of the people are working on this. Number 4, improved risk management. You can take these business risks, assess them qualitatively, and then you can visualize those taxonomies directly into the Kanban system. And you're dealing in facts rather than speculation. And finally, an evolutionary capability. Evolutionary capability makes businesses resilient in the same way that evolution in biological terms makes species resilient. All right, if there is a change in business conditions, market environment, macroeconomic environment, you have to change your business. An evolutionary capability helps you manage that change quickly and smoothly without too much resistance. So, final conclusions are pretty simple. Kanban helps your predictability, your business agility, and your governance. And I'll skip through that. Thank you very much for your patience. That was a long presentation. There's a question.
Can be a user story, right?
Every individual item could be a user story, it could be a change request, it could be a use case, but generally it's something that business people or people that own the requirements care about. They're not tasks.
Yeah, and the concept of estimation or using story points, you recommend using that, not using that?
My personal view is I wouldn't bother. I think it doesn't add any value. There are people who have correlated and reported things like story point estimates against lead time distributions by coloring the distribution based on the story point size. There is no correlation between lead time and sizing. In addition to that, there's some other people. Vasco Duarte, who works at Nokia, has reported data that shows that there is no additional information in a story point estimate versus a story estimate. In other words, their estimation was no more accurate when teams were using story points than when they were just simply counting the stories. All of that would suggest that it's a low value add activity. It may not be adding any value and it would be costing you some time and money. My general view is that estimates are worth having if you can do them quickly, cheaply, and they're highly accurate. So if you have a quick, cheap, highly accurate estimation method and you're actually correlating to prove that the estimation is highly accurate, then I would do it. But generally speaking, if your estimation method is expensive, takes a long time, and it's not very accurate, it is not worth doing. You may as well use lead time distribution data to get as good or better a result without spending any time or money.
But the concept of the ticket still is a user story, a smaller user story, which means that the art of slicing still continues rather than having a big story there. You still want to have a small story.
It's not a requirement for a Kanban system for things to be very small and similarly sized. That is much more a problem when you're using time-boxed iterations. If you're trying to figure out how big is the bucket, it's so long in time and it's this deep, we need to pour a certain amount into that bucket. That that's much easier if you deal with fine-grained items. When you decouple the cadence of the replenishment, the lead time, and the deployment, you don't have to worry about that problem nearly as much. Kanban copes with heterogeneous sizing of items much better, but it is true that small items will flow more smoothly. Right? There'll be a greater system liquidity when everything's broken down into similarly sized small items. My observation is that that level of skill, the requirement analysis capability to break things down into good small items, is the most commonly reported problem to me. I go visit companies and they say, can you teach us how to break requirements down into nice similarly sized items, because we can't do it. And a decade ago, I found trying to teach people better analysis methods met with massive resistance. People get very religious about how they write their use cases or their user stories. And with a Kanban system, when you decouple the cadence, the technical problem you need to solve is configuration management. Can you label or branch the code in such a way that there can be work in progress while other work is being released to production? And actually, most companies I meet are good enough at doing configuration management and version control to manage a branching or labeling problem. That is a much easier thing to solve than teaching people how to write requirements differently. So, someone observed that Kanban follows a Zen philosophy that was popularized by Bruce Lee, the Kung Fu expert, that things should flow like water, and water flows around rocks. And in our world, the rock is resistance to change. So what's the easier thing to, the resistance to change is resistance to writing the requirements in a better way or analyzing them in a more advanced method. And if you can avoid having to run into that rock head on and you can go around it simply by implementing a branching strategy in your version control, that seems to me like a good result. Right? The Zen philosophy to this problem is improve your version control branching. Don't try to change someone's behavior and how they write requirements.
Thanks, David. We'll take two more questions because we're running short of time, and then David is, of course, available in the IT session as well.
Yeah, my question is that for legacy systems, legacy software, was there different difficulties you faced? Any experience you want to share?
So,
versus a new product, when you have a new product development and applying Kanban and applying to an old system, a legacy system.
If it's maintenance on a legacy system versus a new product, you will observe a different mix of risks, but I don't think it would particularly change the principles we use to design a Kanban system. A key point is, in your organization, every Kanban system should probably be different. There is no such thing as the Kanban software development process. Kanban is something you do to your existing process. So your new product development team and process might be different from your maintenance on your legacy, and you're Kanbaning those maybe for different reasons. You Kanban the new product development to give you predictability of delivery and maybe risk management across the risks in the product mix. Whereas the maintenance, you Kanban it to give you predictability of lead time on individual items.
Do you mean to say that then Kanban cannot coexist with iterative models like Scrum? And do you think they conflict each other, Kanban and Scrum?
So Scrum is often a starting condition for adding Kanban, and what disappears almost immediately is the time boxes. Right, so there's a concept called Scrumban, which is where Scrum is the starting condition and you Kanban it and then it evolves. And my former colleague Corey Ladis wrote a book on that topic. There's also some presentations. You might be able to find the videos online. But the Scrumban is the idea of you use Kanban to evolve a Scrum process into something that's a better fit for your business.
That we get is resistance to WIP limits. So what strategies, I mean, we cannot flow around that, and what strategies do you recommend? It's often managers who will resist this, which point came out in your presentation.
So the question is, people resist the WIP limit, and it's often the managers. My counter question is, what are they afraid of? He still needs a microphone. What are they afraid of? So, So this is a very reasonable fear. Managers realize if we limit work in progress, things will be blocked, people will be idle, utilization rate will go down. And the answer is yes, probably that's true for a while. But are you willing to take a short-term hit in order to improve? And sometimes this is a question of whether more senior people understand what's going on. Right? Their fear is that they will get whacked for utilization going down in the short term, but actually senior people in your business may well care about the long-term improvement. They need to be educated. Some educating upwards will make a difference. Another tactic you can use is introducing things like intangible class of service work to maintain utilization rates so that when people are blocked, they work on the intangibles, keeps the utilization rate up, but you still get a lot of the benefits that you need, and it should provoke the process improvements you need later.
I have one question. The question is, when you want to put the items on the engineering ready, okay, the thing is, until unless the requirements are not clear, that you don't have the estimates ready, so you can't put on the engineering ready, so that can be taken, picked, and start working on those. So when you put those, basically, because you are not specifying here as a items as a user story or as task, or it is a complete feature itself, basically. So that's not clear as of now.
That's because it is an abstract problem. You need to figure out what the specifics are. But the question he's asking is, how do you know something in the backlog is ready to be pulled into the system? And there needs to be some definition around that, a reasonable definition of ready. What I would discourage you from doing is using workers who are working on the downstream activity to prepare that speculative work in order to make it ready, because that will affect the predictability. That if you time slice or multitask workers who are working on committed work to do speculative work, the predictability on your committed work will go down, and that is a major source of customer dissatisfaction. So either employ different people to prepare the work to make it ready, or find a way of protecting it. You could, for example, time slice it by saying 4 days a week, people will work on committed work, and 1 day a week they will work on preparing speculative future work to make it ready. That way you have put some constraints around it, and the committed work should behave in a predictable fashion.
So you mean this should be developed by the same development team, the person who is going to do the development task. So they need to come up with the estimates, so rather than somebody else. So that you can identify in some way or other way.
One of the things that I'm hearing you say is there needs to be an estimate in order for something to be considered ready that we can pull it. And you may have some governance rule you can't get rid of, or some budget rules that you can't get rid of that require that. It would be more sensible to have someone else do the estimates.
And I have faced one issue in my real-time scenarios, like when there's your ticket is on the development side, okay, and that's going to take a period, go in block state with some sort of reason. So what happened? The ticket keep on moving between the blocked and unblocked, because one reason got solved and with another thing which make it unblocked. Okay, with some sort of answers. So with some sort of reason, is keep on sticking on the development cycle itself, which usually takes a longer time period in all the process, all the lead time. So how do you tackle such kind of situation, basically?
I'm not sure I understand the problem you're trying to solve, other than clearly things are getting blocked and unblocked, and that's allowing you to understand that the work is somewhat
The
unpredictable.
point is, if you are not going to break down the task requirement or a user story into the task, you can't move the development item to the.
So I didn't say don't
ready
break
state.
it down into tasks. I just said I do not care that the tasks are visualized on the board. What you need to do to get your work done as your manager, I don't care. What I care about is whether you've done it or not. So at this level of Kanban, we don't care about task tracking. Do that in the privacy of your own cubicle.
Okay, last two questions.
Okay, enough to have that one of the questions.
You mean we're 90% done and we've been 90% done for the last half an hour? Yeah.
In a product life cycle, I'm seeing the Kanban is practiced in teams of 10, and some in the same life cycle, I'm seeing Scrum is also practiced. So as such, there is a problem in the handshake between Scrum and Kanban. So what do you suggest?
So I think one of the fundamental flaws in what you've just said is that you're assuming Kanban is a software development lifecycle process, and it is not. Kanban is a management method that you apply to existing software development lifecycle methods. So what I believe you've actually done is you have Kanbaned some existing process, some legacy process perhaps, and at some point in your workflow you have some Scrum activity happening and there is some handoff. That is just a batch transfer, and the question is whether that batch transfer is giving you problems or not. And I can't tell you the answer, it's contextual for you. People will need to discuss, is this batch transfer either on the input side or the output side from Scrum giving us a problem, and if so, what should we do about it? And it's impossible for me at the front of a stage to give you specific advice on what will be a contextual problem. But the principle that some upstream piece of work is done and there's a Kanban system for scheduling it, or downstream and in the middle you have this batch activity that's doing Scrum, those things, that strikes me as quite feasible. But it is important that people realize Kanban is not a software development process. It is not something that you directly replace, say PSP or some sort of traditional SDLC or Scrum or extreme programming. It's not a direct replacement for that. Anyone who's seen a manufacturing environment understands the idea that Kanban do not build cars. Kanban does not build television sets, right? On the other hand, if you have a factory that builds cars, you can come in and Kanban that factory and it will improve the inventory control. It will make it, give you better governance over costs and better predictability over delivery times.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's it. Thanks, David. And as I said, David is available for any further Q&A during our high tea session. I now would like to invite my colleague and founder of Digite, Mahesh. Mahesh has been with the company for over 12 years now, and he will just spend a few minutes giving you a quick overview of the products, because he's the head of product management for the company. So he'll give you a quick overview of the company and the product strategy.
All right, I don't want to take too much time because besides introducing the company to you, we have a couple of cool things to show to you, which hopefully you like more than just being introduced to the company. So I'm going to take 5, maybe 7 minutes and tell you a little bit about what we do. So the company is Digite, as probably most of you know. We have been around for about 10 years, not 12 yet. So we have got customers around the world. We got offices in India and US, and we have. I think we can take a lot of pride in the fact that we have been a pioneer in integrated Agile, ALM, and global delivery type of project management software, which is our main product, Digite Enterprise. And last year we launched Swift Kanban, which is really quickly scaled to become one of the top 2 or 3 Kanban tools around the world. And this is something that David has given us feedback on, as well as a lot of other people. So I'm really proud that we have, based with a team that is primarily in India, in Bangalore and in Mumbai, we have actually been able to build really world-class software, and very happy about that. We are available both as an on-premise as well as a SaaS-based product. Our two main products, like I just said, Digita and Swift Kanban, along with which we provide a lot of consulting, training, and implementation services. I just want to take a second to describe what ALM is, and I think there is a lot of debate, not just probably in India, but around the world, including in US, as to what really is ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. So again, we didn't know it, we didn't know the term when we started it, but we believe that really it meant to manage an application's lifecycle from start to end. So in the services context, most of us, we came from companies like HCL and Wipro and NIIT. For us, it meant from the time an opportunity was identified or a sale was won and we got a new project, to building that application, that was the project that we got, and then finally deploying it at the customer site and managing it till it died, till the end of the life cycle of that application. So really, from concept to delivery and deployment, or from cradle to grave. And that meant that it was not just a software development activity, it was also managing projects, managing releases of this application once it was released to the field. Underlying that, and especially our India-based customers taught us that very well. Underlying all of that, there's a very strong need for defining what process you're going to use to build those applications or to maintain those applications, etc. So we really did all of those things, and this was in 2002, between 2002 and let's say 2005, and we have seen the sort of industry definition of what ALM really is catch up with where we have been in general. And this is the 2012 Forrester wave on ALM, which has slowly started to expand just the software development activity with other things like project management and portfolio management and process and so forth, all of which we have supported really for a long time. So again, it was probably happy coincidence. It was just our own experience working with distributed teams around the world, just understanding the nature of what software development really means, that we built a software that really encompassed all this, and so therefore we are already there in that sense. So a quick introduction to our product portfolio. We really provide a fairly rich ecosystem of tools, along with which we provide integration to a variety of tools that you may already have in your enterprise. So on the middle tier, you see the sort of main work that our users would do, which is in terms of project and program management, the actual SDLC or product development lifecycle, and then once the application is built and deployed, then managing the application and maintenance and SLAs and things like that. Underlying that, you will see the blue or purple layer that you see is the process lifecycle governance. A lot of our customers really, we really started with them with our SCPG or PMO type of groups, which really wanted to standardize processes around the organization and then use that to deploy it around uniformly across projects. So that's that layer. And at the bottom we have introduced Swift Sync integration bus, which actually got launched just a couple of months ago. And it provides you immediately between about 30 to 35 third-party tools, software engineering tools and so forth, which you might already have. And that's a common problem that we've seen in large companies, that your customers require you to use a variety of different tools. And therefore you should be able to easily use those tools without having to deal with different interfaces, different environments and so forth. So within the interface of our applications, you can work with those tools, or your developers can work with their own tools like an IDE, etc., but still be able to provide input to the overall ALM activity. And at the top layer, you have the visualization, where you can either be working with a Kanban board, which we provide, or be working with a standard UI like a dashboard or a inbox type of functionality. So fairly rich software in terms of what we provided in overall ALM capability. I'm going to skip these slides here, which kind of go into a little more detail of Digita and Swift Kanban. And I'm going to come to just a quick list of some of the key customers that we have, both from a Digita perspective, and some of you will recognize your own companies or other companies in the country or around the world. We have nearly 100 customers, or actually we have over 100 customers now, over 300,000 users around the world. Since the time we launched Swift Kanban, we have actually literally thousands of users who have signed up on our. We launched Swift Kanban primarily as SaaS, but we also provide it on an on-premise basis. But besides those people who came and signed up on our website, we also have some pretty key corporate customers who are using Swift Kanban for using, basically for developing software of managing their IT processes. So with that, let me stop here, and I'll invite our Senior VP of Engineering and Professional Services, Sudi. Again, most of you probably know him, who's going to quickly show you some cool things that we have done with in the context of Kanban. Again, with a lot of advice from David that we have, and a lot of input from our customers. So let me just go ahead and switch this.
Okay, thanks Mahesh. So what I'm going to try and do over the next 15-20 minutes is take you through the Swift Kanban product itself, and kind of try and show you what are some of the things that so clearly some of my resolution is going off because of the projector here. Life for Kanban project essentially revolves around this project board. The project board is the single place where the team collaborates, where the team comes together, where the team huddles and does a stand-up call. And as you can see, it gives a lot of information in one shot. It gives you a feel about who's doing what kind of work is happening in which lane. It gives you a feel about where work is getting bottlenecked. For example, by the way, this is my actual product Swift Kanban development board. So it's a live board. It gives you a feel for where work is getting bottlenecked. For example, you can see it at this point of time, validation stage is where it's getting bottlenecked. It gives you a full value stream, right? So for example, you can see that I go from, let me try and zoom it so that you can see it better. I go from ready for development to design to coding to test automation, and then to the reviews, and then finally validation to ready for deployment. So it gives me the value stream, it gives me who's doing what, it gives me where work is getting piled up, it helps me understand which are the resources who need help. If somebody needs help, he can actually just go ahead and block a card like this to say that, okay, I have a problem here and I need somebody to step in and help me out, right? So the other cool thing about the board is that just by looking at the board itself, you get a very clear picture about the kind of work that you are doing. So one of the things that you do is you can go ahead and classify the different kind of work and use a color-coded mechanism to be able to say what's a user story, what's a defect, what's a task, and so on and so forth. And so in our example, yellow is indicative of a user story, red is indicative of internal defects, blue is indicative of a customer defect. And so just by looking again at a glance, I have an excellent view about whether the bulk of my team is doing value-added work or the bulk of my team is doing rework. So you get a one-shot distribution about where your team effort is going at any point of time. As you can see, every lane has this number called 3 by 5, which essentially means that the lane has a WIP limit of 5. And at this point of time, there are 3 cards that are on it. And if I just were to hypothetically drag drop a couple of cards here, then very clearly the WIP limit that I have for my entire development lane, it goes for a toss. So as David was saying, it immediately helps the team to understand something has gone wrong, and then for the team to huddle together in the next stand-up call and say, okay, what went wrong, and how can I, as this say, stop starting and start finishing. So it focuses the team to make sure that what we have taken on the plate, let's push that workflow through not just keep piling on stuff on your lanes. One of the other things that people might be wondering is that Kanban systems do encourage a pull-based work model. Essentially, the principle behind the fact that nobody sitting from the top is pushing down work, on the developer's plate. And the way you do it is you implement a buffer lane here. This is the buffer lane here, a done lane, right? Or a dev complete lane. This is the buffer lane. What the buffer lane lets you do is it helps a person to say that, okay, I'm done with my job, and so you put it to the dev complete lane, and then the testing guy can pick it up when he's done with his card and he's willing to pick up the next card. So, and at that point of time, he can then pick up what and which card he wants to pick up. Some of the questions that I have often been asked is, that today where we are not ready for a pull-based working model. And my common answer to that often is that it's not something that you have to mandatorily do. Swift Kanban by itself allows you to actually implement a push or a pull-based work model, so you don't need to have a buffer lane within itself. But it is some of the things which, if you do over a period of time, you will definitely get significant productivity enhancements in that way. The team member's commitment to the job is significantly higher when he picks the job himself rather than somebody tells and assigns it to him or her. One of the other things is a concept of what we call as swim lanes. And swim lanes essentially lets you define the value stream for different kinds of work on the same project board. So in our case, our requirement process is a very different value stream. As you can see, product management guys, they would first go ahead and identify the user stories that they will give it to us for estimation. And then from estimation, once you have estimated, it goes to prioritization, spec development, and finally it gets ready as spec and estimate is ready to go. So it helps you to kind of have different value streams for the different kind of work that you are doing. Swim lanes, you could take an approach that I would like to have swim lanes, a different value stream for my user stories, and a different value stream for my internal defects, and a different value stream for my customer defects. You could take an approach that I would like to have a different value stream based on my classes of service. For example, if I have an expedite ticket which does have a high cost, if it doesn't get delivered on time, I would like to have a separate value stream along with it. So the concept of swim lanes enables teams to go ahead and map multiple value streams within the same project board, and as you can see, we have 4 value streams at any point of time within our current project. The product is touchscreen enabled. What we have done is we have customers who have actually gone ahead and put this larger board view on a touchscreen where the whole team can huddle together and they can actually in the stand-up call go and move a card from a particular lane to another lane. So that becomes the kind of the basis to be able to see the whole project board at the same time. It is today available on your tablets and mobile so that you can carry it along wherever you are. In that sense, it is kind of a living, working platform for you. It's of course extremely configurable, right? So you can go ahead and define and change all the processes the way you want to do. You can go ahead and define your own card types the way you want to do. So you can go ahead and say that which are the card types that I would like to go ahead and bring it into my product. So you can give its own color coding and give its own WIP limits, things like that. So let me not go there. Let me make it a little faster for the sake of time. One of the other So one of the other things that I have time till 5:30, right? Yeah. Okay. So one of the other key important things is that as Mahesh was saying, the work gets done in different platforms, right? You could have a Jira, you could have an HPQC. The work gets done in different platforms, and therefore the last thing that you want to do is to have a situation where where work is getting done in Jira and then people being manually creating tickets here. So we have ready adapters today with different products. We have a fairly mature web service framework so that you can integrate it with any other in-house product that you might be using. In essence, people can work on that and let the board become the platform for collaboration. That is the essential pitch that we are trying to create. So you could go ahead and pull up a card, put all the details, go ahead and define what you need to do. In the view, you can go ahead and define your comments, and these are all threaded comments. And you can actually define a to-dos and checklist so that people can actually say what all they want to do, what is their estimate, they can file time on it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's a nice notification framework, but since Raghu has already threatened me, let me move to something a little more exciting. So all that I was talking about for the last 10 minutes was around execution. How do you work? How would you work today? What is the board looking like today, and how the team collaborates today on the Kanban board? What we're really excited to show to you, and this is a development piece, so it comes with some caveats, standard caveats, but essentially what we're trying to do here is solve a problem, which is that when a developer says that I will take 3 months to do a job, right? What is he trying to say? He's trying to say that he's fairly confident that he'll be able to do a job in, let's say, 3 months, and that would mean that he would perhaps, he in his own assessment is 80% confident that he can do it in 3 months. If you ask him that, okay, what's your 95% confidence level, he'll perhaps say 4 months. And if you say, if I really need to do it in 2 months, what's the chance that will happen in 2 months? He'll say 25%, right? So when a person gives you an estimate, there is a probability factor that is assumed in that estimate, right? It is never a totally deterministic estimate. The word estimate by itself, I guess, means that. So what we have done here is we have actually, what you're seeing, if you're able to see, you might not be able to see this. Let me increase the size here. So this is the very similar board which you saw that my development team uses, right? It's got the same value stream that we actually use in our board. And just for the sake of at this point of time, we have assumed, we have created three development profiles, and I have assumed that there is only one person, there is only one developer, there is only one designer, there is only one tester, and you can on the board assign that a designer, that my design lane is a working lane, it's not a buffer lane. It has a certain WIP limit. You can say that its range of effort to do a typical design is, let's say, between 1 hour to 10 hours, whatever is the unit. But you're kind of giving a range because you know that in reality it will never be just one number, right? And of course you will, it lets you say that which is the primary resource profile that can do this job on this particular lane. So there is a kind of a stage to resource profile mapping that you're able to do. You are able to define your resources, and you can even define WIP limits for your resource, saying that one person can do only one card. And the other thing that it helps us to do is you can create cards of different type. Just like in our case, we have a user story, we have a custom defects, issues, and tasks. I can create work of different types, and instead of just being a hypothetical run, if I want to know today that for my backlog that I have today, which is, let's say, 30 cards, 5 defects, 5 issues, and 2 CRs, for the backlog that I have today, what is my completion time going to be? So you can go ahead and say that this is the profile of my card mix that I have in my Kanban board today. So if this is the profile, what the simulation lets you do is it actually tells you, and you can see the CFD plotting up to show that it will take 957 time units, and as you can see, the ready for development comes down, the ready for deployment, which is the orange number, it goes up, and I guess the coding plus units, which is where the bulk of the bottleneck is. Correct? So it gives you a very clear picture that, okay, if this is the profile of my team, both in terms of what they're capable of doing and the number of people that I have in my team, then where is my process getting bottlenecked, right? And this is what typically all of us in the industry call as what ifs, right? Doing scenarios to see what is the combination that would work the best given the randomness of real life that we are all facing today. So what I'm going to do is by the way, so you can actually just go to another step and say, okay, instead of just running it for doing one run, just give me a run for 20 iterations. So the system will quickly compute and say, okay, if I were to do this run 20 times, then my average is 982 time units for completing it, and it will vary between 889 and 1067, and it gives me a certain level of utilization for developer, designer, tester for all the three profiles that I have, right? So now that you know that, okay, this is my problem that I have, you are now willing to, you can now go to the developer lane and say, okay, let me increase this developer from 1 to, let's say, 5. Okay, and I go ahead and save it, and I will go ahead and increase the designer from, let's say, 1 to 3, and increase the tester from 1 to, let's say, 3, and I save it, and I say, okay, give me another run. Sorry, I missed saving it. Between the projection resolution and the screen resolution, the UI is screen. So I will go ahead and go to my resource and say my developer, please increase it to 5. My designer, please increase it to 2. Developer, please increase it to 5 and save it, and tester, increase it to 3 and save it. And now when I go ahead and do the same run, I get a very different picture, right? So what was at that point of time taking 900 plus time units, it comes down to 215 time units. And as you can see, the cumulative flow diagram has become a lot more gradual. You can see that work is still getting piled up in the coding lane, as you can see it there. The work is still getting piled up there, but at least its height has reduced, so you know it's a lot better uniform distribution, right? And that perhaps is the big bottleneck that you see even at this point of time, right? So you can do these kind of scenarios, and something more cool, you can actually go to the board and say that, you know, from my testing lane, from my validation lane, there is a 10% probability that when I am testing my enhancements, I will get a defect, right? So you are not only going ahead based on the fixed backlog that you had at a point of time, but you know that in reality, when I am going to do this project run, I'm going to get defects introduced in the system as my cards keep getting tested, right? And obviously now the cycle time, because it has the completion time, because now there is a certain level of defects that is being modeled into the board, it goes up from 215, I think it was last time, to roughly about 240 units. And as you can see, there is a red card that has been added there as things were getting tested. And obviously it's a simulation, so it's not necessarily the 10% probability means it's always going to be 10%. It's a range that you're giving. But you get the message what you're trying to do. We're trying to build what ifs in terms of that if this is my cycle time that I'm experiencing, This is the range of effort that work takes to get done in a particular lane. This is my team member profile, both in terms of numbers and their skill sets, and this team member can act on this lane. Then you can do a lot of these kind of what ifs to say what is the most optimal load or my team profile that I need to have to be able to make the best cycle time reduction. As you can see very clearly, the ready for deployment kept on increasing because as defects kept on getting added, obviously the backlog size increased. I'm done. Okay, so I think that's what we wanted to show. We are obviously very excited to bring not just the Kanban board, but the Kanban board in conjunction with the simulation model, because I think the simulation model for the first time helps you predict what the future is going to be, right? We have all done our MPP planning and we have done an estimated day of completion and computed those kind of numbers, but those are very deterministic models, and you know fundamentally that work is never that deterministic, right? There are so many randomness events that will happen that you just cannot predict on day one. So without further ado, I'll end my product demonstration here. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Puri. So this was based on the Monte Carlo principle for simulation. So are we done? Yeah. Okay. Great. So want to just take a few minutes and thank all of you. Thanks for taking your time and making time to attend this session. We hope this was useful. We just gave you a sneak peek of some of the cool things that we are doing, and I can assure you that a lot more is going to come. Since we were running out of time, I had asked a few of you to kind of get into the session without registering or dropping your card. So I would request you to please, if somebody has not registered, to go back so that we can be in touch, keep you updated, and also invite you for the Limited WIP Society.
Announce that. So sorry for all this confusion with PC changes and speaker changes, but I just want to announce the fact that we have launched the Limited WIP Society India chapter, and the URL is visible there. Please, encourage you to join in there and be part of the discussion, and give us feedback on what sort of things, what sort of topics we want to be discussing as part of the Lean Agile, Lean Kanban, body of knowledge. There is the overall Limited WIP Society website that you can also check out if you don't already know about it. And finally, there are two very active groups, especially the first one, Kanban Dev on Yahoo. If you're not already part of it, I definitely encourage you to join that. It was set up initially by David, and it has got a lot of very good discussion on all topics related to Lean and Kanban. And so if you want to get some good questions answered, it's a great place to ask questions. It's a great place to observe all the discussion. It can sometimes be very acrimonious because everybody's got strong opinions, but at the same time it also gives you a lot of good insight about Lean and Kanban. So Kanban Dev and Kanban Ops on Yahoo, and of course the Limited WIP Society India chapter on the meetup.com website. And of course finally, just a quick connection with us. If you are on Twitter, you can follow us at Swift Kanban. And of course, if you need to get in touch with us, you have all the information there. We also have others. So if you go to our websites, then you'll also see other social media, connections. Yeah, please. Yes. So we'll follow up with. I guess we'll have an email with a link set up.
Given your details, we'll mail it to all of you. That's it? Okay, great. So we break for high tea. Please join us for that. And once again, thanks a lot.